This is the Dallas Morning News.
This episode is from an independent podcast hosted by the Dallas Morning News Opinion Team.
Jody Thornton of JLL. We talked about real estate, we talked about markets and that sort of thing. But I think what I really walked away from more than anything is you got a sincere, effective leader.
And you got someone who obviously has learned to value the real estate game, but also the relationship game inside of the real estate business. He touched really deeply on work ethic and being able to show up for the client, being able to make the phone call, and being able to be an advisor ultimately in that business for that customer.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed him as an individual and hope our listeners get a lot out of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think the idea of HFF going from a small business in the capital markets world, which didn't exist, frankly, 3-4 decades ago, to doing an IPO in 2007, right before the GFC, and then ultimately selling to JLL in 2019. Pretty storied career from the real estate perspective.
Very storied career.
Yeah, tune in. Welcome to Intersections, where we take a multi-generational look at the critical issues facing America. Tom, today's going to be really fun.
It is going to be. Jody Thornton, who's the executive chairman of Capital Markets Americas for JLL. It's good having you with us, Jody.
Thank you for having me.
Now,
Appreciate it.
You work with him?
I do.
So you must be a saint.
That's what I've been told by a lot of people.
I think you've reinforced it. The new pope will clearly give you that recognition.
Thank you.
Soon.
I need that.
He does.
I've been around him too long. That's the problem.
Very, very challenging. It's good. It's good. Okay, Jody, I want to start with background growing up, how you got into real estate, but take me to University of Texas and then ultimately into accounting. Where'd you start? Why'd you start? How'd you start?
My father was an accountant for the Federal Aviation Administration. And so when I was in high school and college, there wasn't really a lot of option in what you were going to major in. It was you were going to major in accounting or I wasn't going to pay for your college. So loved the University of Texas, went to the University of Texas, got a degree in accounting, CPA, went to work for Pete Marwick right when I got out of school in Dallas. And I did that for a couple of years. And I must admit, I kind of liked accounting in the classroom and studying it and all that. I have to admit, when I got out, I didn't like doing it as much. I kind of didn't want to, check the deal. I wanted to do the deal. And so that's why I started looking at other options, had a lot of friends, particularly friends from the University of Texas that were in the commercial real estate business. And I kind of chose to get into the intermediary business.
Okay, well, before we get going any further, I want a football outlook. I want a football outlook on UT, and I want a diagnosis of Arch Manning for the fall season.
I'm very fired up about him, but I'm also going to a deal next week where I'm going to get the real download from Colt McCoy over in Fort Worth.
Okay.
And it's a Cowboy reunion, and I'm going to get the real download on what the season looks like from him.
Great. Are you going to Ohio State?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. I've been there before once, and it didn't end up too good.
So you're not going back?
No, we actually won the game, but I'm just talking about with some of the fans.
Was that the Vince Young game?
That was.
Oh, that's fun. Okay.
And they were lighting cars on fires and stuff like that. It was interesting, let's just say.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. Okay, so then accounting and then real estate. Yeah. Obviously, HFF and the real estate world at the time, and call it the mid-'80s, wasn't exactly a high time, especially with the savings and loans crisis and all the things going on.
You joined that before we fell into the 8-9 situation. Yeah. So why HFF? What led you from Pete Marwick to that opportunity in particular? And again, kind of it's commercial real estate, but it was really more on the capital side.
Yeah, I went from Pete Marwick to a company called Joyner Mortgage Company. And at the time, they were considered more mortgage banking.
Right.
And they represented some insurance companies in Texas. And where I kind of got my kind of like of that business was capital markets is really about the numbers. It's all about finance and accounting. It's just about finance and accounting, in the building of the shopping center and that's what I liked. I obviously had a big background in numbers. I had a lot to learn in commercial real estate, but that's what attracted me to get in that part of the business.
I'm assuming the accounting was a great background for that.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I didn't know the difference between a dock high door and a grade level door on an industrial building when I first made the move, but that part of the business was very fun to learn over my career, just doing it and being in the business.
Were there any early contemporaries that helped teach you the ropes of the actual real estate itself?
Yeah, I think when I first went to Joyner Mortgage Company, my close friend Scott Dennis was a joiner, and is why I went over there. And now he's the CEO at Invesco. Yeah.
Take me through. Ultimately, you join the mortgage company, and then you get to HFF.
Correct.
How did HFF get started, number one? But then ultimately, how did y'all build the business, you and Mark and obviously others, but how did y'all build the business and attract such a impressive clientele list?
I think the big thing, and I went to HFF in 1992. Mark was still in Houston. And, I think the big thing was, and this is probably going to sound trivial to y'all, but he and I viewed that we represented the client. And there was a lot of people in that business who viewed they represented the lender. And we said, no, we're going to go out if somebody hires us to get financing, and we're going to go out and we're going to clear the market on this deal to get our client the best financing. And that probably doesn't sound like a real differentiation for y'all. It was huge. Because most of the people, and still sometimes I'll run into it, in London, the intermediaries, they represent the lender. And we said, no, we're going to have an exclusive on this deal, and we're going to represent the client, and we're going to go to all the lending sources and kind of find you the best deal. And started HFF. And because of what you were saying about what occurred in the 80s with everything that went on, that was a big learning lesson. We got heavy into the equity placement side of the business, arranging JV equity, all that, because we had a ton of development talent. But after what we'd been through, they needed not just the loan, they needed equity. They needed a joint venture partner.
The different way to look at the business, though, being on the client side as opposed to lender, that seems like an interesting parallel to your firm, which ended up with JLL, but also Staubach. I mean, Roger Staubach's kind of the different idea he put was, I'm going to represent the client instead of the lessor. So the lessee instead of the lessor. So kind of a parallel on those. Interesting, you both ended up at JLL.
Well, I mean, again, I agree. And, culturally, that's the only reason why we ever really considered, JLL was we felt like culturally they matched our firm better than anybody else if we were going to merge with somebody and get into the leasing and the tenant rep and the property management and all that business. But to us, it was pretty natural because that's who pays you your fee. If you get hired by a borrower to go out and finance you something, and again, I love all of our lender clients. I love our buyer, all those clients. But I've always said, you got two clients on every deal, you got one customer. And that was really a differentiator. And I think also the business has gotten so much more complex with, we're not just going to go to these two life companies. We're going to go to all the life companies. We're going to go to the agencies. We're going to go to all the banks. We're going to go to all the SASB and CMBS lenders, debt funds, the whole thing. Our business has just gotten a lot more, I'm not going to say complicated, but it's just gotten a lot more robust over the time that I've been in it.
Well, you've ended up with more players coming in. I mean, back in that 80-45 timeframe when you got into it, it was pretty limited. I mean, capital markets may not have been a description. As you said, it was kind of banks and some institutions. Now you've got a whole host of new players that have come in the market and look at real estate as an important part of their portfolio.
Correct. And I think to your point, when I first started in the business, if you looked at some of these asset allocation model, I mean, it basically said equities, debt, bonds, whatever, and other. Real estate wasn't even on the pie chart.
Yeah.
And now you look at how much institutional investors are allocating to real estate, and it's just it's a different business, and I think when I got in the business in the early 80s, it was the brokerage business was kind of, hey, I'm going to introduce you to so-and-so. And by the way, here's my address so you can mail me my commission. And, now that institutional capital, they want they want information.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we spend a tremendous amount of time on, the market, the asset, the comps, everything that's going on about really knowing the transaction to educate that institutional investor as to why you should do this deal. And I think that's heated up so much since I've been in the business. When I first started in business, that level of, knowledge just wasn't required.
So has real estate lost the entrepreneurial spirit? I mean, if you go back to kind of pre that 84, 85 time frame, known by the Trammell Crows, that sort of thing, is big risk takers, big entrepreneurial. That shifted, though, because of the capital markets you've talked about. Have you seen a loss of that entrepreneurial spirit?
Well, no. I think the entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is still what drives a lot of that. It's just the institutions. And again, I would tell you that in the last 5 years, the high net worth family office equity capital has really grown in our space in addition to the institutional capital. But, you got to admit, when I started the business, you go down and, go, well, Lincoln owns that building, Trammell Crow owns that building, Paragon owns that building, Vantage owns that building, and you just go through the list. And, today you go down somewhere and go, well, Colorado Para owns that building, and Cal Stirs owns that building. And it's just I think people have really gotten comfortable with commercial real estate. And I think the reason people like commercial real estate is it's a permanent asset class. You can touch it, you can see it, you can walk it. And, I always make the analysis, Farmer was a drugstore that they went bankrupt. If you own their bonds, you got zero. If they were a tenant in your shopping center, you still own the shopping center, and hopefully you could put CVS or Walgreens in there. Yeah. And there's just a difference in it being what I call, kind of a hard asset. And I think that's started to really be appreciated by, now you're hearing, mutual funds are going to start, investing in real estate. So
it's in 401ks now.
Yeah. It's everywhere. So let's go to the relational side of the business and how you grew HFF. For a younger audience, obviously people that will listen to this and think, hey, I'm interested in real estate, or I want to get in the business, or I'm young in my career.
So you as opposed to us.
Me, definitely. Well, definitely compared to you. How did y'all think about your first hires, and what were the qualities you were looking at on those first hires versus how the workforce has changed, call it 30 years later, sitting in your seat at JLL?
I think we wanted young people that were knowledgeable about, real estate finance, probably not necessarily accounting, but, more real estate finance. I think you wanted people that had, in our business, some pretty good communication skills, because I still think that's a big thing in my business for most people. I think you wanted somebody that was going to work hard. I mean, I think we've always kind of called it, we like a kind of a blue collar mentality, person that wants to come to our firm and work. And I think when we started out, we were pretty successful in finding a lot of those kind of people. We kind of really tried to build our company around culture. And, culture was, we're a team, we got each other's back.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to operate at a high level of ethics and integrity. And we're going to, going back to the beginning, we're going to put the client's interest first.
Sure.
And we're going to put the best team on the field.
So culture more important than technical.
Yes.
Were there any guys or gals that came through HFF early on that then went on to go do major things in the commercial real estate space?
Yeah, I think we have, I think generally if young people come to our company and they don't want to move into production, we don't have that many that go to be at a competitor.
Mm-hmm.
I think where you see the biggest shift is some of them don't want to be a broker or an intermediary. They want to go be a principal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you went around, I'll just say Dallas. I mean, there's ex-HFF young people that work at, I couldn't even tell you how many of the companies around Dallas real estate on the principal side.
Sure.
And, I think that makes sense. I don't think everybody's wired to want to be a broker.
And specifically, walk us through, what does a producer do? Day in, day out, what's their role? What's their challenge? What doors are they trying to knock down and hurdles they're clearing?
I think they're calling on the real estate clientele, across not only, now, I think the business is a lot more across states, the country, United States, wherever. They're calling on clients. I do think there's been a pretty high level of product expertise. When I got in the business, everybody did everything. And now you have people that all they focus on is industrial. Mm-hmm. All they focus on is debt. All they focus on is retail, hospitality. And so I think, really getting educated and experience in those specific property types is important, and now at, JLL, we have a debt business, we have an investment sale business, we have an M&A business, we have a placement agent business where guys raise funds. And so it's gotten a lot more, I just say product specialty expertise in whatever you're doing within capital markets. And that's what has created the growth in the business.
So let's talk industrial real estate, because I know you have a little bit of background in that. Yep. Industrial real estate's obviously totally changed the last decade. Talk to me about where it was in the early 90s as y'all were starting out and where we are today, and then we'll get into kind of where it's headed.
Well, I laugh because I don't think we saw industrial going where it went. And when, if you go that many years back, industrial was always the smallest deal from a dollar perspective. Yeah. And I want to say it was like 10 or 15 years ago, and we didn't really have a big industrial presence. And I was the one who kind of got tapped to build the industrial team because we saw what was going on with industrial. And, and I think with all the onshoring and everything that you're seeing going on now, it's been just I don't think I ever thought I would see industrial be the favored property type along with multifamily.
And that change you're talking about, that really goes back to the Amazons and those kind of the opening up of distribution.
Correct. I think, today, if you look at supply chains and, we saw, what happened in when we went through
COVID.
When we went through that, it just showed the importance of what all that means. And I think, like as an example, I think, Texas has been a big beneficiary of that. Mm-hmm. And so it's helped us really grow our industrial presence. And again, industrial is kind of, in my mind, it's kind of the prized property type, and everybody likes it. It's generally speaking low capex. Yep. And it's just a good real estate investment.
So, what do you see as the future next 10 years? Where does industrial go? What happens? Obviously, I think everyone's waiting on interest rates to be cut and deals to happen more frequently. But where do you see the actual specific asset type of industrial going?
I think you're going to, with everything that's going on, I think you're going to see industrial go. There's going to be a lot more manufacturing than we've seen in the past. Mm-hmm. And I'm already kind of seeing that happening. And I think that's going to be the big, I don't know how long that's going to go, but I think in the immediate future, I think that's what you're going to see.
Do you think the administration is the one that's propelling that and really pushing the lever there to get onshoring and manufacturing?
No, I think it's because of what went on during COVID, and that we had so many goods and supplies that were coming from other countries that I think, generally speaking, companies and everybody are bringing more of that back to the U.S.
So more having been exposed on their supply chain during that period of time.
Correct.
Than the administration's push to generate manufacturing.
Correct.
Through tariffs, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You go back to 84, 85. So you saw that situation when we changed the tax laws, the big issues and changes and really downturn that we saw in real estate in that period of time. You kind of referenced the 8 and 9 period. Give us a sense of what you learned from those down periods. And where I'm going to lead to is the fact that folks like him have never seen a downturn and what that means for your business.
I think the biggest thing that changed when we went through the 80s was there wasn't a lot of equity in the business. And developers were borrowing in excess of 100% from the bank for their development project and signing personal recourse.
That's really how they made money. They made money on the front end.
Correct. And, sign personal recourse. And, today in the business, I think on average, what you would see in a commercial real estate deal is 35 to 40% equity on a to-be-built deal. And most of our clients they'll sign a completion guarantee, but they don't sign personal recourse. And I think when I look back on that, it's like as tough a time as the 80s were. You learn things you're not supposed to do. And that was one of the things I learned that you're not supposed to do. And again, because think about it, if you have the right kind of financing on a piece of real estate and you have a good chunk of equity in the deal, if we go through a downturn, you're going to be able to ride through it. Yeah. And that's what you've seen on some of these ones we've had since then, where not all deals, but a lot of deals were able to ride through that issue.
And that's where you had the new players coming in. They were the ones putting the equity in, the large institutional players.
Correct.
That allowed the major real estate projects to go forward.
Correct. But again, that was where I think when we got our equity business going, I mean, Mark and I were literally going to Boston to meet with AEW when Aldridge and Eastman and Walsh were still there. And it was like, yeah, Jody, you've always helped us, get our debt, whether it's construction financing, permanent financing, but we had a lot of development talent here. And now they said, we want you to help us find our equity partner also. And that was, I mean, again, this goes way back, but that was a big difference to me in driving the future and success that we had at HFF.
So what concern do you have? Because a lot of the folks who have come into real estate now have never, ever seen a downturn. Mm-hmm. What kind of exposure does that get? And from your standpoint of managing a large staff and making risk decisions for your clients, the people have never seen a downturn and what can happen.
I think I agree with you, and I hear this question a lot. I do think that we're pretty good as a firm in educating our younger people about what some of that looks like. So I don't think they're totally unaware of what a downturn would be and what it would look like. But yeah, they've never experienced it. And I mean, I thought the 80s was like a Mad Max site. It was, meaning I was young. I was in my 20s, but, even going back to the 2007, when that all came in 8 and 9, that was the first time ever, at HFF that we ever had to let people go. Mm-hmm. And,
when y'all just gone through an IPO.
Correct. Yeah. And we were, we got the call from the New York Stock Exchange that said, if you don't get your stock up, we were the last real estate related IPO that happened. Before GFC. Before the GFC. And it wasn't long. I don't remember exactly what the time was, but a year maybe. And it was like, if you don't get your price back up to $5, y'all are going to be removed from the stock exchange. And so we had to start making some of these, cuts. And that was kind of painful because, as I said, we're really big on who we hire, our people, culture, and all that. And that was a new one for us to have to go through and lay off people.
How well insulated do you think we are today with the changes that you've talked about? So we've gone through the situation where, as you said, it was north of 100% in a lot of deals going in. Now you've got the equity, you've got some large players coming in, those institutions, they're there for the long period of time, et cetera. Have we changed the real estate market so we've somewhat insulated it from those big swings that you would have seen over the last 50 years?
I think in a big way, yes. I think there's always going to be outliers. I think there were people that went through this last little wave we had when interest rates, went way back up, and you got to admit it was kind of free money. And there were a lot of people out there. I'm not going to say a lot. There were some people out there that were acquiring multifamily and were using a little bit higher, leverage floating rate debt. And the floating rate debt came due, and that didn't work out very well for them. And we heard some, companies that went under and things like that. So it's not like, the market is foolproof. But I think to your question, I do think the real estate industry is much more prepared to weather a downturn and a storm like that than it was before.
More shock absorbers.
Yeah, yep. Correct.
So let's touch on some of what happened the last 4 or 5 years post-COVID. Obviously, you had the repricing that's gone on in office. Where do you see office real estate going as historically the most expensive asset type? Industrial historically being the least expensive asset type.
Right.
Not that those have inverted, they have not. But office is definitely in a murky position. What's the future?
I think it's starting to improve. And we're starting to see now a lot more trades than we were before. I don't disagree with you. I think office is kind of being repriced. And I do think one of the things that was the heaviest burden on office was it is the most capital intensive of all the asset types. I do think there's older product that is out there that's going to be something else, whether it's going to be a multifamily project or industrial building or whatever. But I do think the office market is coming back, and we're starting to see it clearly based on the number of trades.
Sure.
And even I think you're going to start seeing it on some pricing. The rents in office are highest. I mean, they're crazy. But
Dallas just experienced the highest trade, I think, of the year with the Link being sold to Cousins within the last couple of weeks. So that was a good sign for at least urban core of Dallas.
And I
real
think
estate.
there's some more coming.
Yeah.
And so I feel good about office. I feel good about office coming back. I still think we have a lot of work to do to get there. And I think there's going to be, like I said, older products, some certain locations and all that. They're going to have a little bit harder time.
Do you have a viewpoint on reimagining how office fits with tenants? Because obviously the value of office is tied to ultimate occupancy. I mean, yes, you can be in a good location. All those things are great, but you got to get tenants in a building. They got to stay and they got to pay. So do you see the future of office evolving into more hospitality driven or something like that? How do you look at that?
I'm probably wrong, but I don't. I think it's, it's not where I focus my time.
Yeah.
But, when I go to work every day, I go to work to be with my colleagues, to talk to them, to work, to get deals done. And I hear all that about, everybody wants the best gym. They want the best restaurant. They want a pool on top, whatever. And that's not me. So probably don't have a good feel into that one.
Is that a generational issue, though? Yeah. And going back to who is going into offices today?
I do think there is a bit of that with some of the younger people wanting nicer quality office. I think, parking is still an awfully important deal, and that's getting harder and harder as some of these areas get so dense. But yeah, I think a little bit of it is generational.
Talk geographic markets. So as you look out over the next 5 years, you talk sectors, talk geography.
Meaning,
where do you look at, from a capital market standpoint, opportunities? Where do you see the best opportunities geographically?
As in within Dallas or across the country?
Across the country.
I mean, I think that ebbs and flows. I mean, it's, obviously Texas is really big and important right now. But, I think, as we were 2-3 years ago, one of the biggest industrial markets was Savannah, Georgia. And now I'm hearing, New York is coming back. I'm hearing a lot of really positive things right now about what's going on in San Francisco. I was with a client earlier today that's talking about doing a couple of to-be-built multifamily deals in Chicago. And so I think that's all going to ebb and flow.
Was it San Francisco office or industrial?
It was office. Yeah. And I think there's a definite feel that there's a positive momentum going on and kind of bringing San Francisco back. I'm sure you read about it all the time, and about going on in New York, but, the Carolinas, I think Nashville, we're still doing a lot of stuff down in Florida. And I think, generally speaking, that's going to be something that's just, it always is moving and changing.
So let's talk JLL for a little bit. Obviously, we both work there, so this will be a fun conversation. But walk me through, what was the first meeting that got you interested in that potential partnership?
Mark and I had a meeting with John Gates and Greg O'Brien, and I'm trying to remember who all else was there. I can't remember. I don't think Roger was there because I think Roger had already retired. Sure. And we've known John for a while, for a long time. And again, I'll go back to what I said. I just thought if we were ever going to, kind of merge with a full service, commercial real estate company, the one that we had the best chance of doing something and being successful would be JLL. And it was mainly driven by culture.
But why merge? I mean, clearly you had a successful firm.
Mhm.
It was growing. Markets at that time looked positive, strong, et cetera. Why even consider a merger as opposed to continue to grow on your own?
I think a lot of the clients that we have, again, going back to some of those larger institutional clients, want less intermediaries that they're dealing with. They'd like to make it smaller. And every now and then we were hearing we didn't get an assignment because we didn't put the tenant in the building. And again, just having, I'll say this, try to say it respectfully, but now, if a client has an issue, there's not any issue they could have in commercial real estate that JLL couldn't help them solve with all of our different, platforms that we have, whether it's work dynamics, whether it's leasing, whether it's property management, whether it's project development services, whether it's capital markets, whether, whatever it is, we're going to have somebody that can help them. And we were some of our people, I would just tell you this, some of our people were saying, we need to be in these other business lines because we think it would help with some of our clients, for us to be able to help them with their capital markets.
Has that proved to be the case?
It has.
Fascinating.
It has.
So you've been there now 6 years.
Yes.
So I think it closed, I don't know, somewhere around July of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Where have you seen the business expand, and kind of what have you learned in those 6 years being at a large corporate organization? Obviously, you and I have just kind of similar backgrounds here. I sold my business. You sold your business. And so what have you learned? What have been the takeaways?
We've really focused, to be honest with you, on the one JLL, concept. And that, to me, is the thing that I enjoy the most now, is when we win a big piece of business, and it was a piece of business that went across, the different business lines. And it's happening a lot more frequently now that we've kind of gotten everything integrated. And it's, I don't want to talk about any specific deals, but we've had a lot of instances where, the one I always like to tell everybody, because it's just a good example, is Work Dynamics called us and referred us the business, the client. Thomson Reuters had a headquarters building out at the Addison Airport. And we pitched all the other firms, and we won the sale assignment. And I knew the sale assignment it was an industrial site. It was a user was going to buy it, which is what happened. And so we sold the building to a user. And then our tenant rep team got to rep Thomson Reuters to move them to their new office space out in, I think it's Frisco or McKinney or something. So we had 3 different business lines, that participated in that deal. And that's starting to happen everywhere. And that's to me the part that I enjoy seeing the most. And we used to talk about that a lot just in capital markets. Like, if we're doing the debt, let's do the equity. And if we do the debt and the equity, let's get the sale. And so, had that happen across capital markets. But now that it's happening against all the other business lines is what I think is really fun to see.
So do you see on the ownership side, and this may be a little technical, but do you see on the ownership side a move towards consolidation of the service lines and the service businesses in which they pick? So, maybe have, let's say Blackstone, for example. Blackstone's got CB leasing somewhere, JLL leasing somewhere, Cushman doing property management somewhere else, et cetera. Do you see these institutions moving more towards a streamlined, called vertically integrated approach with these larger brokerage services firms?
Some. I think you still have some that view we got to touch everybody so we see all the opportunities, but we definitely see some consolidating and liking to use a more consolidated approach.
And what do you view as the impetus for that? Is it a cost situation? Time?
I think it's time and, relationships and knowing people and being confident what kind of service you're going to get out of that relationship, et cetera. I think that's a lot of it.
Not surprisingly, when you started talking about deals just a moment ago, your eyes lit up. So you look back over your career. What deals do you look at that are specialty, that were really in some ways satisfying or really, really stood out?
Oh, I think anybody that's in my business loves the deal part of the business. And, that list would be a long list. I think, what would I talk about? I helped finance a project out in South Lake for Peter Cooper. South Lake Town Square, and at the time it was kind of, I think, the best open air shopping center in the United States. And we later ended up selling South Lake Town Square for Peter Cooper. The Village in Dallas is a project of, the Pogue family and Phoenix Property Company, and, been involved in the financing on that for several years. I couldn't narrow it to a single asset, and, I've been involved in
the toughest deal you've done.
Probably raising capital for to be built anything right now is the toughest stuff. And I'm sure I'm being a little facetious because I'm sure it was just as hard in some of those other times. But right now, raising capital for to be built product is very hard.
Who are some of the contemporaries that you look up to in the Dallas real estate world and or nationally? Who are some of the men and women that you're fond of?
Again, I work with, a lot of different clients. And I think, I'll just say like one of the industrial clients that I really respect a lot is a company called LBA. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy there named John Garrigan that I really respect a lot. Mm-hmm. I'd say I've really respected a lot what all the Granite Properties, Michael Dardick and those guys have done here in Dallas.
For sure.
I've really respected going back to, Blake Pogue and what they have done in the multifamily side of the business. And, if you talk about, internally, I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of really good partners in the business like Mark Gibson and John Pelusi and John Fowler, et cetera, and Mona Carlton.
Yeah, I actually want to touch on Mark just for a second because obviously y'all were integral to the founding and then growing of HFF. Give me just the background on how that relationship came together over the years. I think on floor 7 in the office today, you're at one end and he's kind of at the other. So y'all are still running and doing things together. And I would assume that's going on close to 4 decades. What's that relationship like? And give me some insight into how y'all do business together.
Oh, it's been really good because Mark he's a great business partner. You never see anybody that will outwork him and outdo the homework. I think it's really lucky having a partner that you can always just trust no matter what. And whether I'm there or not, I'm not ever worried about what he's going to say on my behalf because I really trust him. But we've been very fortunate to build a team that has really good partners across the U.S. And whether you Kevin McKenzie, on the West Coast, or if you go to the East Coast and John Fowler and John Pelusi, and John is not as involved in the company anymore, but now you got guys in New York like Chris Peck and Travis Anderson in Charlotte and Richard Reed in Atlanta, and we've really built the company with really good partners and good people across the U.S.
You've talked about culture and gone back to that several different times, but faith is an important part of your life. Mm-hmm. How do you integrate that into your organization and have that become part of the culture?
I think you got to walk your talk. I don't think you can stand around and preach all the time. You got to let what you do show. And I've always been, really big on whether it's, deciding what we're going to do with an employee, how we're going to split a commission, how we're going to, handle a client problem, whatever it is. I hopefully like to think that my faith shows when I'm doing that. So I've always said, you just kind of got to walk your talk.
Were there any specific moments that were difficult? Obviously build a business for 3+ decades. You've got to have harder times where your faith was integral in getting you through those difficulties.
I think that goes every day. I wouldn't even put it on a business thing. I think, if you talk about family and, things at my age now, a lot more things, my sister passed away and Terry's mom passed away and all those kind of things. I think, business, but I think life in general, I think you gotta, and I'm not telling you by any means that I'm perfect at it, but you gotta lean on your faith every day and those decisions that you and those issues you deal with.
And talk to me actually a little bit more about the balance there. I think it's good place to go for the younger listener. That's entering the space and being trying to work hard, run hard. How did you view balance in your life, personal life, work life, early on in your career versus how that's changed today?
It's my family's very sweet and always says that I did a good job in balancing work and family life. I would say I've always been kind of a person, and I will say this about Mark and several other of my partners, being pretty competitive. And, you don't play sports anymore and all that. So we're competitive about work. Right. And so I think a lot of times that competitiveness is what really drives you to, put in a lot of hours, make an extra trip here, do this, do that. And you just really have to be balanced in what you're doing. And because, that thing, I really feel like some of the people in my company are so competitive. I look at their whiteboard, I look at everything they got going on. They could be up there, 20 hours a day. And I think you just have to draw the line sometimes and say, my deal was I really tried hard not to work ever on weekends, because I did work hard a lot, too late at night. Mm-hmm. And I think you got to come up with your own boundaries of how I'm going to try to stay back. It's just like working out. If you're going to work out, you're going to have to make the time that you're going to go work out this number of days every week. Well, I think you're going to have to do the same thing on work and keep it in line with what you have to do with your family. And, I had 2 kids, but, that was very important to me. And I wanted to coach, her basketball team and coach his 6-man football team. And, it's hard you really do have to make a focused effort on balancing your schedule.
Before we close, I want to get you in kind of 2 separate areas, but they have the general theme of looking forward. Talk to me about innovation in real estate. I know you're not a technology guy. I get that. That's fine. But at some point, the real estate world will get with some sort of the technology landscape. It has to happen. I'm not saying it's happening today, but what happens as it pertains to the future of innovation in real estate and technology in real estate? Has technology impacted your business? And probably more specifically, even since you've come to JLL, given the amount of resources. And then I'll ask you a follow-up after that.
Yeah, again, I'm old enough to where I'm really not a big technology guy, but it definitely has. I think about things that how I think our firm communicates across the country, mm-hmm. across the world, as well or better than any other. And some of that's culture and team and sharing information. But, we at JLL are very lucky because we have some very good systems on how we share that information. I really do feel like a lot of times why clients hire us today is they feel like we have better information than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And as such, our people are educated better than anybody else. And I think a lot of that comes down to the technology we have. I do think technology is a tool, mm-hmm. and we're not a technology business, but I do think we've been pretty lucky in that we have some very good technology at JLL to help us do our job better.
So will that change? Let's talk about when you joined the business, kind of folks that came in, kind of what was important to them, kind of the values, principles, and contrast that with the young people that are coming in to your organization today. So how are they different? And do you see technology changing the type of people or even the number of people that you bring in the future?
I would tell you that when I got in the business, maybe the most important thing was relationships. And that's why I think people's ability to go meet clients, build their trust, get their business and all that is still a very important part of our business. I think, as I was mentioning earlier, I do think now our business has gotten a lot more execution focused. And I think a lot of that big institutional capital, they want information. And they want to see all the information is, why should I do this deal? Tell me everything I need to know about this deal. And it's everything when you come down to it. So I think, while I think that execution, information, probably you could even loop that in. The technology part of the business is going to become more important. I think a lot of the young people are going to have to know that I still think what drives our business is your ability to go out and build those relationships with those clients, when they have an issue or they have something that they want to buy or they have a problem, you're going to be the person they're going to call.
Are they as willing to put in the long hours that you talked about a moment ago?
Yes.
Are they willing to build those relationships? Are they willing to commit to an organization like you did, HHF, over those years? Are they the same people, or is it a generation?
The one thing I'd say is they are definitely willing to put in the time because I see it firsthand. I think, I think building the relationships when you're a young person, I don't think you're going to find that as many people have that skill set where they're going to go out and be able to build those relationships.
Why?
I think that's always been it. I mean, I used to always say for every 30 people that I can find that can go execute a deal, I can find one that can go originate the deal and find it. I mean, and it's just a skill set that I think some people have. As I said, I do think as execution important as our business has grown over the years, sometimes if somebody's just really good at executing the business and knows the business, that is their form of origination. And if they get in front of a client and that client does one deal with them, they're going to go, that's my person. I'm going to do it again with them and again with them. But I do think that going back to your question, I do see those people being able to put in the time and work really hard. And I think building those relationships and getting out and doing that is going to be what's going to be interesting to see if they're able today.
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yeah.
So as we wrap, put you on the hot seat a little bit. What keeps you motivated?
Honestly, I really, really, really enjoy the people that I work with, my business partners, and you just want to not let them down. You want to kind of show up and make it happen, right?
Hopefully.
I think it's the people that I work with. I really, really, really enjoy the people that I work with and the people at JLL, and that's kind of what keeps me going.
Well, flip the question. What keeps you up at night? So as you're looking at your business today, kind of looking out with all the challenges that you've got, markets, geopolitical, et cetera, what keeps you up at night, or what's the real worry?
I would tell you that it's probably gets back to people. And if I hate it when we have, people issues or, people leaving or people that are unhappy and all that. But if there's something that generally, I don't get that worked up anymore at my age, about what's going on in the market. And we've shown even this year that we've been able to play through it. And, we've had a pretty darn good year to date. And, I think it's mainly what keeps me up at night is when there's something going on within the company about people.
If you look back 3 decades, maybe 4 decades, what would you tell your younger self just getting into business, spry and ready to go, that you've learned over those last 3 or 4 decades?
Have a good work ethic. I mean, I think that's really the thing that I look at today is I think I'm not going to say unusual at all, but you need to find those people that are willing to put in the time and the hours and really work hard. I don't know. I mean, it's always been around, but entitlement and, and things like that, you want somebody that's going to put in the time, work, and the effort.
Last one for you on the hot seat. Was it worth it? Were the sacrifices, all the things you went through to make things where they are today, was it worth it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been a great ride, and it's been a lot of fun. And like I said, made friendships that I could never have imagined making over all these years. And it's been definitely worth the effort.
Jody, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you all for having me. Appreciate it. You bet.